Hello and welcome to another episode of Attacking Third. I'm your host, Sandra Herrera, CBS Sports lead NWSL writer, joined today by my colleague and co-host, Lisa Roman, NWSL play-by-play analyst. How are you doing today, Lisa?
Sandra, I'm good. You can't forget that it's also Olympic time. So you are an Olympic writer right now. You do it all. You don't sleep and you still look fabulous. And it's so impressive to see. I love it. Everyone, if you need a place to hear about the Olympics, of course, you can always come to Attacking Third, but check out Sandra Herrera and her writing on CBSSports.com. I'm giving you all the plugs today, Sandra, because you've been working your tail off to cover these Olympics. So thank you so much. Keep it up.
I did not expect to have emotions this early in the episode, but that's what happens when you have a good working relationship with somebody. You hype each other up. Love to hear it. I'm excited for this episode. We have a super-sized preview episode for all of our listeners today. I mean, yes, the Olympics are happening and we are here for you. We want to be your go-to place for your Olympic coverage, reactions, in-depth analysis. But we're also here for NWSL, baby. So we're going to be previewing Olympics with USA going up against New Zealand. And we're going to be previewing all of the NWSL action that's going to be taking place over this weekend. But
because
first,
the NWSL doesn't stop for the Olympics, which is great.
Sleeps. It never, ever sleeps. And that includes with us. We thought, maybe today we'll have a little bit of a lighter day because yesterday was so chaotic. No, we're going to keep going. There's a lot to get into with all of these games and even a little bit of news. But first, we're going to do a quick plug for everybody. The NBA playoffs have wrapped, and that means it's NBA draft season. CBS Sports HQ is your home for Thursday night's event. We'll have pick-by-pick coverage, including grades and expert analysis for both rounds. So how to watch HQ? I'm glad you asked. You can watch on CBS Sports app on your phone. It even pops out so you can have it playing while you scroll Twitter. You can watch using the CBS Sports app on your connected TV, and you can watch on your computer via our NBA draft tracker page, which will be easily available on cbssports.com homepage. And it's all free. And featuring our good friends, Gary Parrish, Matt Norlander, Avery Johnson, Bill Ryder, and Rip Hamilton. So don't forget, NBA draft coverage tips off at 7:30 p.m. on CBS Sports HQ this Thursday. Lisa, did you watch any of the NBA finals?
Yes, I did. Although I'm in Philadelphia, born and raised in Philadelphia, I have a very soft spot in my heart for the Bucks and for Giannis. I went to school in Milwaukee. I had the pleasure of working for Fox Sports Wisconsin and covering the Bucks and the Brewers my senior year. And yes, go Bucks, go Bucks. What about you, Sandra? Midwestern at heart over there?
Listen, I rolled up today to record this podcast in my Sox hat. And in true Midwest fashion, I was like, look, you got to cling to any little Midwest tie. And I absolutely am so thrilled for Giannis and the Milwaukee Bucks and hyped for off season is always where everything happens. So that includes even in the NBA. So shout out to the draft coming up. And I hope everyone tunes in via the sports app, the CBS Sports app, to take a look at that. But we got to get into this content, Lisa. The folks are here to listen to our sick Olympic content. We've got United States women's national team taking on New Zealand. United States coming off of a huge loss to Sweden, a bit of a shocking loss, quite frankly. It's going to take place on Saturday, July 24th at 7:30 a.m. Eastern time in Tokyo Stadium. But New Zealand also coming off of a loss of their own to Australia, 2-1. Man, we got to just dive right in. It's sort of only 3 group matches in a group stage. Hard to believe, but it really feels like this is a bit of a must win for both of these teams.
It is. New Zealand coming off that 2-1 loss over Australia. That was a really big challenge for them. New Zealand hadn't played a game before then for about 16 months or something. Australia, no, they haven't faced a lot of competition either, but the rivalry between those two countries is so big. So the fact that New Zealand was able to score in that match against Australia is really big, especially because for those who didn't get a chance to watch that game or haven't read any of the recaps, Sandra, I'm sure you're all over those recaps. Australia had the lead in that game, 2-0, about 30 minutes into the game. So Australia came out hot and heavy on the front foot, looking to get goals, and that's exactly what they did. Throughout the second half, New Zealand got back into it. Australia kind of let up a little bit, but I mean, that was a great game in and of itself. I'm sure you can go back and watch it, people that did not watch that one. But now looking ahead, as the United States look at this New Zealand squad, they need to be ready. We touched on the US and what happened in their last matchup against Sweden in that 3-0 loss, which was really bad. And we'll get into this USA side and what they need to do. And Sandra, I'm going to pick your brain on what those players said in those media availabilities. However, New Zealand, they have really good players. They have a young squad. I think going into this Olympic, there was 3 or 4 players that were completely uncapped. One of them, Gabby Rennie, she subbed into the game late against Australia, ended up getting a goal in her first cap with New Zealand. She scores a goal, and I think it was in the first minute of stoppage time against Australia. So for New Zealand, that shows how much heart, how much grit, how much fight they have, especially in these Olympics. And now they take a look ahead to a game against the United States where it's a must win for New Zealand. They know the United States is big. However, if you look at their last match against Sweden, there are plenty of places that New Zealand can capitalize against this United States squad. Another player for New Zealand, besides all the young talent they have going up against a very experienced United States team, goalkeeper Erin Naylor, she had a tremendous game against Australia. She kept New Zealand in that game. It could have easily been 4 or 5-0, or I guess 1, thanks to the goal from Gabby Rennie. But goalkeeper Erin Naylor is good. And so the United States has a tricky opposition against New Zealand and in goal. However, Naylor can get out of positioning in the game against Australia. There was a few times she was caught off her line, and she's had to make up for it with her great saves. If she can stay tight positionally and not get pulled out of position, she can make more saves and bigger saves, and perhaps both of those Australia goals don't go in. However, they were really good goals. This matchup is a must win for the United States and New Zealand is going to bring it. They are going to bring it. They have the young players, but they're already fired up. They got their big game over with Australia. That matchup is huge for them. And now they're looking at a United States team that is older, just like numbers wise on these rosters for New Zealand. 10 players are 25 years or younger. 10 of them. The United States has 2, Tierna Davidson and Katarina Macario. 2. The United States has 2. Now, on the other side of that, the United States has 11 players that are over the age of 30, and New Zealand only has 6 over the age of 30. But New Zealand squad is so young, and there are so many pros and cons to go with having a young, inexperienced squad and an older veteran squad. And we can dive into that. But Sandra, initial thoughts when you take a look at this matchup and especially the United States coming off of that Sweden loss, how has their mindset changed and what changes for them going into this New Zealand game?
I think I've referred to this team before in the past as like a straight up machine, but like with personality. Because I think when people think about, like a very maybe rigid machine type of team, like we think of those early 2000 teams from Germany, just built a certain type of way. And so is this United States team. But I say that they're a bit of a machine, but with personality. And we hear all the time that that's part of their DNA. It's built into them to never say die and to never quit and to continue to sort of keep improving when there is opportunity to improve. And they're coming off of one of their toughest losses in that 44 game unbeaten streak, which was snapped. And there's a ton there for them to look at. Late last night, sitting in on the media availability with Alyssa Nair and Tierna Davidson, that essentially was everything that they were echoing. And in the Olympics, more than any other time of the year and any other type of competition, you have to have a short memory. And we hear that a lot with pro athletes and anybody who plays a sport professionally, that you can't dwell on that stuff, the losses that occurred in the past. You can use them as motivation, but it's different dwelling versus fuel, right? So already that's everything that we're hearing from these players. We had access to Alyssa Nair first, already talking about how she has to channel her inner Bill Belichick, to try to, map things out ahead, looking at New Zealand. And when we had access to Tierna Davidson, she, like you said, she's one of the youngest players on this team. And I was like, man, I really want to ask Tierna a question. And these are two players that I've covered for a while in Chicago via the Red Star. So I'm already a little bit familiar with their personalities and how they navigate their media sessions. But I was very curious to ask a young player like Davidson, because this is only her second international competition at the senior level with this team. And the first experience was at World Cup, where it was a great experience, where they just were like the team to beat. And they were just unreal performances happening in that World Cup in 2019, to now having an Olympics where it's a little bit different. And we hear all of the time how difficult the Olympic Games are. You're playing them in peak heat, peak humidity. There's only a couple days of rest between each game, on top of travel, because there's still travel when you go to a host country. And it's difficult. It's why there hasn't been a back-to-back sort of cycle champion, like someone who wins a World Cup and then goes on to win the Olympics, because it is hard. I was like, that's just true. So,
newsflash, it's not easy to win an international competition.
Crazy.
And for all those people that thought that the US was just going to steamroll through these Olympics because they are so good, no, it's really hard. It is really, really hard.
You got to throw it out there, like, as a reminder for some folks, because there's a little bit of maybe there's a little bit of privilege, or a little bit of spoiling happening when people are so used to watching this team win all of the time and lift trophies and have all this type of success, that when a loss like that happens, it is absolutely jarring. It is absolutely jarring. And that's not to take away or disrespect Sweden and what they did on that day, but it absolutely is a bit of it's a gut punch and a real reality check to be like, okay, wait a second, there's always opportunity, and this is going to be the main one. And for Davidson, looking ahead to New Zealand, and you and I are looking at all the notes in the paper ahead of these games as well, trying to prepare ourselves. And we're like, man, there's nothing on this New Zealand team. They haven't had a ton of time together over the last 18 months. Not a lot of footage out there on this team. What in the world is the US going to be scouting when they're trying to prepare for New Zealand? And asking Tierna Davidson about that, I also sort of asked if maybe the preparation is mostly on themselves. And she essentially agreed last night and said, the focus has to be on us because there's not a lot there for New Zealand. And she absolutely quoted that infamous DNA quote. She said, we got to really reach down deep into, bring out our DNA and like have that be what it is. It's just more along with the preparation for a team like New Zealand and all of the potentials and what ifs, the thing that they really want to try to control right now is themselves. So it really is a lot of preparation on the mental side of things for the United States ahead of this New Zealand game. And while New Zealand does have capable players on their team, they're playing in an Olympics they're playing at the international level. They would not be here at this level if they weren't a capable and talented team. But you have to say, looking at these two teams and their buildup and their lead up into these Olympic Games, despite the loss on both sides of the ball, you're looking at USA and saying, this team is the team that has to beat this other team. So I think if they don't defeat New Zealand, it's probably going to be a bigger shock than it was against Sweden. That's what I'm saying. Where a loss against Sweden is, you look at that and you're like, that is absolutely respectable. Sweden is like a team that would cause you trouble. And we have been saying it for a very long time. But you look at New Zealand and you're like, no. You're not trying to be disrespectful here, but USA should go into this game and absolutely be ruthless and win.
Sandra, we can't talk about that yet. We're not there yet. We'll let everyone know Saturday morning what happened and if we're smiling or if we're upset, because I'm not going to lie, I was a little upset after that Sweden
loss. I'll find out right away if they just tune it on our faces.
But you're exactly right. The United States has to focus on themselves, and coming from a player like Tierna Davidson to say that and have that maturity and that ability to see past what just happened and move forward onto the next game when you don't have a lot of footage and you don't know much about the team you're going up against. That becomes such a big part of it. Even at a much lower scale of this game, like in high school games, you know your opponents. And high school soccer competition, you know who you're going against, you know their style of play, you know the personnel to look out for. This is so surprising, and it's really difficult that the United States doesn't have a big scouting packet on New Zealand. It's so much of the preparation that goes into this is spent in the classroom, in the locker room, in the film room, preparing for what your opponent will throw at you. However, coming off, even if there was so much information on New Zealand, coming off of the game against Sweden, the United States needs to focus on themselves. Despite whatever they know about New Zealand or don't know, they need to hone in on what they can control and what they can focus. And that's what happens between the ears and between the lines. So anything that they can control mentally and emotionally, that's between the ears in their head. And it's the mindset, it's the aggression, it's finding the rhythm, it's having confidence in yourself and in your abilities, because I'm sure confidence levels are not at an ultimate high right now for this team. And then between the lines, so what you can do tactically on the field as a team and as a unit, to instill your game upon your opponents and really throw that on them. And what's that famous saying, Sandra? It's something along the lines of like, it's only a mistake if you let it happen again. So for the United States, they can't let the game against Sweden and all the quote mistakes they made happen again, because then they become mistakes. Instead, they have to learn from everything that happened in the game against Sweden, learn from it, watch that tape, understand where they could have positioned their bodies better, why Rose Lavelle is running down the center of the field, questioning where all of her teammates are, and continuing to have that growth as a team. But this game against New Zealand for the United States is a must win, and there is no question about that.
Absolutely. We're going to see what's going to happen based on the individual performances and the collective performance as a team from the United States. And we'll be here for everyone to recap that. And we'll also be paying attention, quite frankly, to any adjustments that are made, rotation or otherwise, because we're paying attention to all the coaching decisions as well. And that's all the stuff that we have to cover. So I know people are looking forward to that. And we will be back, with everybody to recap all of that stuff. We're going to take a quick break. Just want to remind everyone, if you're enjoying what you're listening to so far, that you can absolutely find us on Twitter at Attacking Third, and you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, anywhere you find your podcast. So go ahead and find us if you're enjoying what you're hearing so far. It's time for NWSL news.
There's news.
There's so much news. NWSL news ahead of NWSL preview. We're going to get into it all for everyone. There are 3 days worth of games this weekend for NWSL. And it's appropriate that kicking things off on Friday is going to be Kansas City and North Carolina. And it's appropriate because there's a trade that took place between these two teams. Didn't expect that we were going to be chatting a little bit of NWSL news before previewing NWSL matches, but here we are. Kansas City and North Carolina Courage engaged in a trade before this weekend's games. North Carolina have acquired Amy Rodriguez and allocation money in a trade with Kansas City, and Kansas City has received Kristen Hamilton, Haley Mace, and Caitlin Rowland from North Carolina. Man, big trade, big trade. Summer window where there's always that opportunity. Will they, won't they? You've got 2 teams here, right, Lisa, on 2 completely different ends of the table. We've got North Carolina Courage kind of in that top 6. We've got Kansas City, NWSL, newest expansion side, struggling a bit in this season, sitting 10th place, bottom of the table, where they, quite frankly, they have been all season, all year, as opposed to the Courage, who might have got off to a little bit of an inconsistent start in their regular season, but very quickly kind of got things together, had a great June, had a great month of games there. And during this Olympic stretch, they're trying to retool some things a little bit. It sounds like. What were your impressions of this trade when you saw it drop?
Well, when I saw the news drop, my jaw dropped. Not that I was necessarily surprised. I I just wasn't expecting it right now today. Like you mentioned, this was our off day. We were supposed to be casually enjoying our lives in the summer, taking a break from the early morning wake up calls, and this news dropped, and immediately we were like, we gotta get on this. This is a really big trade. It's a really interesting trade. A player like Amy Rodriguez has been in this league for years, like 10 years or something. She's a player that has really integrated herself in this league and with her teams and with the squad from Utah and now Kansas City. But she's also a player that is on the team in last place right now in the league. And that is not something that Amy Rodriguez is used to. She's used to winning. She's used to being not necessarily the star, but she's used to being a key player in the league. And she's still an incredibly key player, was an incredibly key player at Kansas City. However, she wasn't making waves because they weren't winning. And if you're not winning, you're not making headlines. And if you're not moving up in the standings and getting 3 points every week, you're not being talked about. And Amy Rodriguez was falling through the cracks, not because of her skill and of anything she can do on the field, but just because of the play that was surrounding her. I'm not sure how this trade came about, but for Hugh Williams at Kansas City, this is a chance for him to develop his club and a chance for him to acquire great players in Kristen Hamilton, Haley Mace, Caitlin Rowland. Great players. Those are great players. Before we knew we were going to preview this Kansas City, North Carolina game, and I had some notes sketched out based on what I know about these teams and what I was going to tell you guys to prep. I was ready. I had my notes ready. And then this news dropped and I essentially scrapped all my notes because this changes everything. This changes everything.
You just got to throw them out the window sometimes.
Which happens. This happens all the time. That's the beauty of this industry, that it's constantly changing and the games are changing and the players are changing.
We too have to make our own adjustments to our own games sometimes. And here we are talking about a trade that will shape the way we chat a little bit about this game. We're reacting to it. This news just literally, quite frankly, dropped before we decided to record this episode. So there's a little bit of information that still needs to come out. Like, will these players be available right away for this weekend's game? Again, this match is going to be taking place on Friday. That'll probably come out a little bit later once we start seeing injury reports and things like that. But for the long term, in terms of the remainder of the season, I gotta say, I think North Carolina for right now got the bigger piece that they need. Moving forward, they're missing Lynn Williams. It's apparent. Kristen Hamilton is a forward who can really, and we said this on the podcast before already, Lisa, a type of forward who could start probably on another top line across the league. So she's going to Kansas City, where apparently they want to have some different looks in their attack, and they're getting that with somebody like Kristen Hamilton and also a Haley Mace. But the Haley Mace aspect of this trade is what's most interesting for me, because this is the player that North Carolina went out to acquire the rights for, and it just apparently didn't work out. Maybe it just wasn't a player that was really kind of working within the system that Paul Riley has going on in North Carolina. So we'll see how she sort of fits in with Hugh Williams in Kansas City. Is this a player that he wants to have involved in his attack? I mean, Haley Mace is someone who also has the ability to play out on the back line. And Kansas City needs help everywhere, all over the pitch. So we'll see. We'll see how she slots in. And Caitlin Rowland, they're getting a goalkeeper as well in Kansas City. So you got to see where she sort of fits in. Abby Smith is injured at the moment. Nicole Barnhart at the latter stages of her career, coming off of the bench. And maybe they want to just tighten that up there as well in Kansas City. So we'll see how it all plays out. And it definitely shakes up how this game can look moving forward. I think we just got to go to picks. So who do you think might take this match, or is it going to be a win, loss, or draw, Lisa?
Well, so we don't know if these players will be competing on Friday night in this match. That changes things, because when I look at the future of this North Carolina team, now that they have Amy Rodriguez in their front line, can you just imagine the sparks between Jess McDonald and A-Rod? It's happening. That is going to be really big, exciting play
I am absolutely here for the mom squad. Like hit me.
Yes.
McDonald and Rodriguez like doing like as a
Yeah.
front two in some capacity. I would love to see it, and apparently we're going to. So I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I think as
Yeah.
it stands, I don't know. Let's get wild, Lisa. Let's get wild. I think
So
you know what?
I'll throw out my picks. I think
Good.
North Carolina is going to win this.
All
I
right, you
do.
know what?
They'll get the
I'm gonna
win.
I'm gonna be wild and say Kansas City gets the first win of the year. I don't know. We'll just see.
Yes.
Sometimes a big shakeup is what is sometimes a big shakeup is what needs to happen for a team. Sometimes you need that jolt. You need that little bit of a jarring thing to happen, and that is big for Kansas City. I mean, this losing Rodriguez, a player that they were touting as someone that they were very happy to have, a veteran forward, ties to the U.S. national team, experience at the captaining a team through a lot of ebbs and flows and ups and downs. And now she's gone. So who's
going to step up?
Who's going to step up and sort of be that
step
person?
up?
Yeah,
and
so,
not just on the field, who's going to score the goals, because she scores the goals for Kansas City, or she used to, but she's the leader. Rodriguez was the leader of that team, the backbone of it, the mom, in a sense of like, we got to get these things done. The players turned and looked to her. Who is going to fill that role now that she's not there? And you're right, this could be just the right amount of shake for this Kansas City squad to get them their first win. And they will get a win this year. So it's going to come eventually. And maybe this is a little electric spark that they needed to get it. I don't know. I'm going to go North Carolina, Sandra. I'm going to stick with North Carolina. They'll get goals. North Carolina.
I'll stay with Kansas City. It'll be something for us to chat about on the next episode. Looking ahead a little bit to Saturday, we've got two matches coming up. Orlando Pride versus OL Reign, Houston Dash versus Portland Thorns. Looking at that first one, Pride versus Reign, number 5 versus number 9. Both these teams coming off of a loss. Looking for the bounce back. Covering OL Reign last weekend at Chicago Red Stars. Got to sit in on a little bit of post-game media where Jess Fishlock and Ziara King were made available to the media. And they were a little bit, Jess Fishlock, as frank as always, she's one of the ultimate professionals in this league, kept it very, very real, dropped an expletive in the post game and said those were goals that were conceded, and that wasn't even on Chicago, that was absolutely on OL Reign to have allowed that to happen, essentially. So talk about jolts to teams. They're going to be expecting Laura Harvey to return on the sideline to coach them post Olympics. So that new change hasn't exactly come into play for them yet, but that could be happening sooner rather than later. Who do you got in this game, Lisa? Both these teams need to have a bounce back performance.
Yes, bounce back for sure. I think this one's going to the Pride, Orlando Pride. They have Ashlyn Harris, who was saved her 4th penalty kick last week against Portland. Yeah, okay, Ashlyn Harris, go off again and again and again. It's so impressive. And Sydney Leroux, she didn't get a goal last week. She is there, though. She's struggling a little bit offensively, more just to find her rhythm with the players around her. Not that it's anything against her. She's working her tail off. It's not for lack of effort that she didn't score, but she'll get there. I think she hit her 100th NWSL regular season game last week as well. So that's really big for Sydney Leroux. I think Orlando has this one, although OL Reign has a lot of firepower. I think I mentioned this in our recap episode. The players that they have are really good. And Bethany Bowser, 4 goals this season. She's on a roll. So I think she'll score. She'll get one in past Ashlyn Harris. But I think that Orlando and the forwards and Tim Rack, Taylor Korniak, Sydney Leroux, they will produce. They're getting their rhythm. They're finding out they're about to hit their stride. So I'm going to go both teams to score, Orlando Pride to win. What do you have on this one?
I think it's going to come down to the midfield, quite frankly. And I think that Orlando has been struggling a bit in the middle third. And when I'm looking at OL Reign, especially what I saw coming off of the Red Stars game, if they can keep it turned on, because they turned it off a little bit in that Red Stars game, I'm looking at a midfield that has Jess Fishlock, Jennifer Marozan against the midfield for Pride, and I'm saying that they're going to win those battles in that midfield. So Orlando Pride, if Vigiano is healthy to go, build on her minutes, I think that's going to be huge for the Pride. I think they've been missing something in their midfield, and Vigiano is a very smart player, a very, very smart player. And you need to have those type of players in the midfield, those players who could sort of read the play happening a couple passes, before the sequence is actually occurring. And that is what she brought to Orlando Pride in that midfield. So I would like to see it. I would like to see a good midfield battle. But if All Rain end up winning that actual midfield, I think they could kind of squeak it out. I think the Pride have been struggling to get on the scoreboard when it counts. And we've been seeing this team show a lot of resiliency, and they've picked up consecutive very late game stoppage time goals, which are very impressive. And you love to see the fight in this sort of new wave of culture for the Orlando Pride. But it's not enough to have these very, very late game goals where you still end up losing the game. So I think it could go either way. Honestly, I think this one is a real question mark, but I'm going to go.
You have to pick.
I'm going All Rain. I want to pick the opposite of whatever you're doing, so that we can just watch all. Well,
that makes it interesting.
All these games are going to end in draw now. Watch. That's so funny. Houston Dash and Portland Thorns. This is a big one to close out Saturday. Number 3 versus number 1. Both of these teams having a really good Olympic stretch, quite frankly. They've been showing the depths of their squads for sure. But Houston, maybe a little bit of a home advantage in this one, hosting Portland away. What are you going to be looking for in this match, and who you got, Lisa?
Well, points wise, Portland's number 1 right now. And we just mentioned Houston number 3, 3 points for Houston. If they get a win, they get 3 points. They are now tied with Portland. If you asked me that a month ago, I would have said, no way, Houston can't tie with Portland in the rankings. They're doing it. Houston is proving me wrong. I'll speak for myself. They're proving me wrong. Shea Groom, she's finding her pace. She's getting a little pissed off, and it's working in her favor. She's taking the game under her control, which she hadn't done previous to this because she had players to lean on. And now that those players are gone for Houston playing in these Olympics and international duty, Shea Groom is taking this game personally. And it's showing. I think Veronica Latsko is also playing pretty well, combining with Groom, and that combination has been working well for Houston. And I think Jasmine Spencer could go off in this game. I've been waiting for her. She's almost like a horse in the gate, ready to race, and she breaks through and she gets good opportunities. We saw her get a few goals this year already, but I'm waiting for her to just break out of the gates and be a game changer. And I think that she could do this against Portland. Now, Portland, they're really good right now, Sandra. They are really good. They have Morgan Weaver, Simone Charlie that are stepping into their own. The goals last week that they had over Orlando, really good goals. These were not lucky goals. These were not easy goals. They were beautiful, well fought, well struck, well executed, clinical goals. Sophia Smith's goal was insane, just dribbling down the field and then hitting it upper 90. Natalie Kuika is really doing well for this Thorns team. This is going to be a really good match. I think Houston can pull it off. If it's not a draw, which we've already jinxed it, and it's probably going to be a draw. I don't want it to be a draw, though. I don't want this to be a draw.
No,
I want Houston.
I always want wins or losses.
Yeah. I think that Houston could win this.
Okay, I'm going to go Thorns on this one. I think they're doing too much in the attack right now.
They are.
Ignored. They're doing way too much in the attack to be ignored right now. And I'm looking to see Morgan Weaver finally get that breakthrough on goal. Yeah. Look, the second year, we'll just call it like it is. These are second-year rookies because they only got so much time in 2020. But she's in her second year with the Thorns, and we're watching her attacking ability progress week to week. It is very, very impressive. We're going to see it. I think this might be the game. For sure. So I'm going to go Portland on this one while you're going Houston.
Are you going Portland with a Morgan Weaver goal? Come on, double down on it.
Sure, I'm going Portland with
Yes.
I'm a winner in this either way because I love to be, who doesn't like to be right? And B, I also like to be wrong. It's fun to talk about that. So I'll double down and go with that for sure. Let's close it out, Lisa. We got Sunday, another duo of games. Racing Louisville FC back from a bye week, going up against Washington Spirit. We've got number 8 versus number 7. It's not as drastic as you think. We'll hit you with the standings at the end of the episode. Only a few points separate all of these teams, quite frankly, on the table at the moment. But Washington Spirit, Louisville, maybe looking for another statement game in this Olympic stretch. I got to say, this could be one where it's a real battle.
This could be huge. If you guys remember last week, Washington played, defender Sam Staub got a red card about 7 minutes into that match. And then Washington had to play down 10 against 11. They were still able to score 2 goals with only 10 women on the field. Washington appealed that red card against Sam Staub, saying that she was not the last defender and she did not deserve that. And it did get approved. So Sam Staub will be able to play. She is eligible. That red card was rescinded. Reminder, that's the second red card that was rescinded in 2 weeks for this league. Yikes. Just a reminder, keeping everyone up to date on the news in this league. So Staub will be in the back with Paige Nielsen, and this allows Andy Sullivan to not be that center back anymore for the Spirit and instead slide her forward into the midfield. And when Richie Burke can push Andy Sullivan higher into the midfield, and she can be more of an attacking threat and not just a defensive cover for this team. They are more dangerous. They're more dangerous. I mean, anywhere Andy Sullivan is on the field, she's dangerous. But if you can push her higher, that's good for them. However, Racing Louisville, they have a good team. They had a bye week this last week, and I believe that Christy Holly and his squad used this last week and time off to get better, to really improve, to study their teams that they're playing against, to have some fun and relax a little bit. But they chose to get better over this off week that they had, the bye week. I think Louisville is going to come out and put Washington on their heels. Not right away, because Washington's a very good team. They'll possess, they'll pass around. But when Louisville gets the ball, they're going to look to go quick. They have Savannah McCaskill in that midfield, who is a force to be reckoned with. She'll battle up against Andy Sullivan. So this midfield battle is going to be really, really big. This game will be won and lost in the midfield. I'm going Louisville.
Man, Lisa, I hate to do this, but I'm actually going to agree with you on this.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm going against my dark horse pick for right now, because I know I've been saying, I was like, yeah, I've been saying it all year. Spirit are going to be my dark horse pick, and they're going to be a team that is always going to stay kind of in the middle and probably sneak into maybe the top 6, top 4, perhaps. But I like that Louisville's coming off of a bye week. I think they're going to take a look at some things. There's been some things circulating in the news that I think could be kind of motivating for them. There's a lot of chit and chatter about players that aren't with the team right now. And I think they're quite frankly over that a little bit. They want to focus on the players that are with them at the moment. And I got to say, I'm real excited for Nadia Nadim. And I am not going to choose against Nadia Nadim on this week, where she could get time finally with Racing Louisville FC. She was a big pickup for them, international player coming from PSG. So, and she's a veteran of NWSL. Nadia Nadim is no stranger to this league and what it takes to play in a physical league like this. So I'm excited to hopefully see her get some minutes. You don't look at this Louisville roster right now and not be excited about some of the pieces that they have on their team, whether it's a Nebony Salmon or whether it's a Nadia Nadim, and not have some positive things to take away from their roster. So I'm gonna go with you. I hope Louisville takes this one, and I hope we get a Nadim goal.
Well, welcome to the good side, Sandra. We're happy to have you over here.
All right. Well, let's
on my picks. On the good side is my picks.
All right. Let's see. Okay. Let's see what's going on with this final game then. Let's see what's going on. We've got New Jersey, New York, Gotham FC versus Chicago Red Stars, number 4 versus number 2. This is probably going to be another good match. I think it's a real good one to close out the slate of games for the weekend, because both of these teams coming off big big wins in their previous matches. And Gotham are the hosts while Chicago is finally hitting the road after having a bit of a small homestead of their own. Who do you got in this one, Lisa? What are you going to be looking at in the matchups?
So this is a tricky game. Does the NWSL do this on purpose? Put the game last of the weekend? That is probably the most difficult one for me to break down because it seems to be that way week after week. Gotham is a team that going into last weekend had only conceded 3 goals. Now they've conceded 5 against a Washington team that only had 10 players on the field. So Gotham's defense is not as solid as it was believed to be. They're still incredible. They have an incredible defense. Don't get me wrong. Didi Haracic, Estelle Johnson, Amani Dorsey, Gina Lewandowski, great defense. Caprice Didasco, I'll round out that back line for everyone. They have a really good team and a really good defense. However, they conceded goals. Also, they scored 3 goals, which is something we had not seen a Gotham team do. Score multiple goals, have various forms of attack and creativity and dynamic ability in the attacking end. Midge Purse has been really lateral and vertical throughout this season. And last week against Washington, we saw her being more than one-dimensional, 2-dimensional, 3-dimensional. There was even a little 4-dimensional in there from Purse. That was huge for them. And then Chicago coming off that win over OL Reign 3-1, Mallory Pugh, she's getting there. She got that goal. She got the only goal that Chicago scored in that last game. Remember, Chicago's on this own goal streak. It's really fun. It's crazy. So watch this game because you never know what could happen. However, I don't know if I can say this, but I think it's going to be a draw, a 1-1 draw. I think Chicago will score. I think Chicago will score against Gotham. They will. They have too much force with Mallory Pugh and Watt up top. There's a lot going for them, and they're hitting their stride. They're right in pace to score another goal. However, I think that Gotham can score as well. And I think that because Gotham got 3 goals last week, they're going to put a little more willpower and a little more force in getting numbers up, opportunities, maybe exposing themselves in the back a little bit, but it'll get them a goal against Chicago. I honestly want to go 1-1 draw, but what do you think?
Listen, I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case. Both of these teams, when they met earlier in the season, it was a draw. So I wouldn't be shocked if it ends up that way once again in this matchup. But I hope there's a result, quite frankly, because results are more fun. There's more for us to break down. But I'm not choosing against them. I rolled up here today in my Chicago gear. Go Sox. So I'm going to be going for the Red.
What else is new? You're always in Chicago gear, Sandra.
That's how
Represent.
I am. You gotta stay on brand for the folks. Can't confuse the people out there. But I'm gonna be going for the Red Stars on this one. I really do think it's gonna come down to the midfield. While I think there's like some really intriguing attacking parts in this game on both sides of the ball, I think it could come down to a clogged midfield to see what we're gonna happen. I mean, we're watching McCall Zerboni get regular starts with this Gotham side again, and it's huge. It's huge. It's not shocking to me that there are positive results for this Gotham side as she's getting more time with this team after working her way back from injury. And Allie Long has been like the one consistent factor in this midfield for Gotham. And then for Chicago, they are really intriguing in their midfield as well because they've really have been taking a look at their midfield tactically, and they're kind of doing a bit of player rotation based on the opponent that they face. So who we're going to see in that midfield, all depends on game day. Are we going to see a Woldmo in place? Are we going to see a Colaprico? Well, we'll see. But I think there are more pieces there in Chicago's midfield to sort of maybe change some things up. Other than Gotham. So we'll see. I won't be surprised if it is a draw, but I'm going to hope that there's a result, and I'm going to hope that there's one in the favor of Chicago Red Stars. If they force Gotham and their notorious backline into an own goal, you better put some respect on Chicago's name. That's going to be way impressive. So we'll see. That's the final game closing out the weekend of matches for everybody. Lots of soccer action happening. Let's take a look at these standings before we sort of dip out and roll out from this episode. We've got Portland Thorns at number 1 with 19 points, Chicago Red Stars at number 2 with 17, a 4-way tie from number 4 through number 6 from number 3 to number 6 with Houston Dash, Gotham FC, Orlando Pride, and North Carolina Courage. They're all tied on 16 points. Number 7 is Washington Spirit with 15 points. Number 8 is Racing Louisville with 11 points. Number 9 is OL Reign with 10 points, and Kansas City NWSL with 3 points at the bottom of the table at number 10. Folks, try to drink some water in between all of these games. We're talking NWSL action, Olympic action, Friday, Super Saturday, and Sunday. There's a lot. Lisa,
fans and reporters, we have to stay hydrated just like the players.
Stay hydrated. You drink your water, get your electrolytes in there, and get your caffeine in there when you can and when you're supposed to. Be smart with it. You got to be smart with your caffeine. And as always, we'll probably be doing our little caffeine check-in. Everybody, just want to thank you all for listening. A quick reminder again to follow us on Twitter at Attacking Third. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, anywhere you listen to your podcast. We're also available as video, so subscribe to us on YouTube. Just visit youtube.com/Attacking Third, and we'll be back Saturday with an Olympic episode. So for Sandra Herrera and Lisa Roman, this was Attacking Third.